Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2020 and the final part of this experiment where we're going to take a look at what would happen if you had a 30-year transfer embargo on the biggest teams in Europe and every team in the Premier League. Now, in the first two parts, we have gone right up to the end of the embargo. It's the year 2049. This time, we're going to go 50 years into the future after the embargo and see if the teams you can see on this screen right now have managed to maintain their dominance. So the key teams we're looking at really at the moment, Leeds United have done a brilliant job over time, winning a huge number of Champions Leagues. Bologna have done well from Italy. Derby have done well recently, and there's a couple of German teams, Wolfsburg and Eintracht Frankfurt, both doing very well as well. They are the key teams. You can see it's a while since any of the big teams, Man United the most recent one, it's been a while since they managed to win the Champions League. Barcelona did well. We've seen Real Madrid absolutely dominate even all this time later without any signings because they've had such good wonder kids come through their system. So they could be one of the first teams to really bounce back. In the Premier League, Leeds and Derby totally dominant. Fulham doing well recently. Nottingham Forest have been climbing up but not yet won a title. And looking at that league table, you can see most of the big teams still in here. Chelsea just got relegated. City and I think Liverpool are both down in the Championship at the moment. If we just have a quick look at that league table, you can see there are Liverpool, there is City. Now, people did want me to show the League 2 kind of positions, and what we're looking at really here, you can see the likes of Norwich and Burnley were down here. There's nobody left at the moment. But if we just have a look through the years, we might see if any former Premier League teams did get relegated out of non-league football, because people were saying that obviously they might have dropped out and then come back up. But I'm 99% sure that that didn't happen. Obviously, you can keep an eye out for any big teams. You can see Palace getting promoted out. And you can always pause the screen if you want to look at one of these seasons in more detail. But we're pretty much back to the start there. You can see occasionally Premier League teams do drop in to League 2, but nobody ever got relegated from League football. So that's just the way it is, really. Now, that's not to say it won't happen when we go forward 50 years. It's very likely that the likes of Norwich and Burnley, because they've now lost any competitive advantage they used to have, they don't have the resources that they used to have. You can see even now only okay finances. Burnley especially a prime candidate to go quite far down. Their stadium isn't quite big enough to generate the huge revenue that they would want. So we can keep an eye on this going forward as well. But do drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed this experiment. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Only 1 in 5 people watching these videos are actually subscribed. And let me know in the comments what you'd like to see in the next experiment. I actually have no idea what I'm going to do next, so I need to do a bit of thinking after I've recorded this one. Hopefully it'll be out tomorrow. Now that the game's getting on a little bit and we've done most of our big experiments, you might notice it's a couple of days between videos rather than every day. I do work full time, I have family and things like that. You know, I can't keep up every day making content, especially as the time it takes to go forward, especially with an experiment like this. It can take a couple of days for my computer to actually get to that point. So apologies if you're looking for daily content, but there are lots of great Football Manager content creators out there that do it full time, and they have videos every day, so I recommend checking them out as well. But let's go forward now 50 years into the future and see how the world is looking. So we are now 50 years in the future. As you can see, last time we left off, Derby County were Premier League winners. The following year, it was Brentford who took the league. I think that's their first league title. Forest in second. Manchester United and Arsenal both down there. Spurs down there in mid-table as well. Brentford take the following year, but you can see Arsenal now in the top 4. Brentford take another one. City now back in the Premier League as well. Then Derby County taken a couple in a row before Bristol City win their first Premier League title. Manchester United now up to 4. Spurs getting relegated again there. Derby taking another one. The top 4 though being pretty well protected, but you can see Chelsea now back up here as well. City towards the bottom end of the table, but United very close to breaking back into that top 4. Derby with another one. Manchester City violating budget rules. There is a warning of what is to come. 5-point deduction for them. Only dropped them down by 1 league position. Yeah, by about 1 league position. They would have finished above Chelsea otherwise. But the following year, Manchester United 2 points off the title. This is the worry that a team like Manchester United is just going to come flying back to the top. Derby County pretty established as the big team in England at the moment, though. And they do manage to hold off United again. Liverpool finishing rock bottom of the table. But then finally, Manchester United win it 2 points clear of Derby County. I mean, it's a really interesting top four here. It does look kind of, to me, like the late 80s, early 90s kind of time in English football. You can see United, though, take another title and another title. Derby now dropping down to 5th. City pushing up the table. Huddersfield actually come to win a title then. Then Derby and then United back at it once more. But they're the only big team to have really come back. Arsenal are pushing towards Europe, but not quite doing it. Fulham take another title, which they then hold 3 years in a row before Derby County come in. And Manchester City finally back in the top four above United. Fulham pick one up and then another one. You can see Liverpool having no success in trying to get back in the Premier League at the moment. Sunderland suddenly appear in the top four and United drop down to 10th before Forest take, I think that might be their first title, Nottingham Forest, and then Coventry take one as well. So we're seeing a huge amount of rotation here. I mean, where were Coventry before? They were in 4th, but they've come pretty much from nowhere. They were down in mid-table for a long time, and then they've come back to take a title. Which they also retain the following year ahead of Nottingham Forest. United seem to have dropped off now. Coventry with another one. They must have had some sort of big takeover because that's 4 in a row now before Leeds managed to steal one, 12 points clear. But Liverpool and Chelsea both relegated again. They are not the teams they used to be. Only really Arsenal, United and City have given this a good go at coming back as Leeds get title after title. Then suddenly Spurs, I mean, it's only 71 points and they're 23 points behind Leeds, but they do well there. Forest get another one. And that run that United had where they were taking the top seems to have filtered away, but Liverpool now up there before dropping back down into mid-table. Coventry and Leeds sharing a few, and then United do manage to take a title and retain it. And again, and again, and again, and again, again, and again, and again, and again. I think that was about 8 in a row. And finally, Sunderland managed to take a title after finishing second. For 3 years, they finished second behind United. United with 100 points. The United actually get 100 points again, but Sunderland managed to beat them to it. 2 points clear at the top. 33 wins out of 38. Manchester United flying out of nowhere, though, at that point. I mean, look at that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a row that United managed to win. When did that start? That started in the 88-89 season. Now, if we have a look at their landmarks and go back to around that point, 88-89, you can see a new chairman does take over. It doesn't say that he's a super wealthy guy, but he seems to have maybe turned the taps on a little bit. You can see they've had a few changes since then, which might be why they've started to drop off a little bit. But a huge number of consecutive titles for Manchester United. If we look at this transfer history, we'll get an idea of maybe how they did it. You can see where the embargo ends here, because if we go back to that 49 season, they would still have been embargoed at that point. But the following year, they go out and they spend, the game's going to run very slow, 213 million, followed up by 93. And then I think it jumps even higher the next year. You can see here 292. So if that's about the 300 million mark, you can see at this point they're having 350 million. Then it drops down for a little bit. That's about 100 million here, just looking across. That's about 100 million or under that they were spending about 10 years in a row before suddenly it jumps back up again and you've got well over 100, 200 million there, 100 million, 300 million. And they've kind of declined a little bit again since that point. But United really the team that have come back and done extremely well out of the big clubs, but very few other teams have actually managed to crack it. It's only Manchester United who managed to come back and win a title. Since then, you know, Coventry had that period of success. Leeds have had another good period of success. Forest, Fulham did very well, 6 out of 7. United, they had this early stint, but then weren't able to come back. And Manchester City absolutely failed to come back and win a title. Now, they finished 5th, but look at this. They are very much a mid-table team. Despite rich finances, good reputation, good stadium. If we look at their transfer history, And we'll just use a graph because of how slow the game is going now that we're 100 years into the future. But you can see the embargo here. Now this, at their peak, is about £335 million. So that would make this about 200 million here. So they've spent an enormous amount of money, and they are continuing to do so. If we just go to any random year here, you'll see a huge amount of money being spent. 97 million, 162 on that random year. 15 years further down the line, 83 million. It's not like they've turned the taps off. They've still got a huge amount of money at their disposal. A lot of that will be sponsorship and other things, but they've just not been able to compete. Liverpool as well have really struggled bouncing around. They had a tough time establishing themselves in the Premier League, but when they did manage to do it, they've just not quite been able to keep on going. Chelsea as well, still not in the Premier League. They had a little bounce in and out and not done it. Arsenal, very much a mid-table team now. Spurs have managed to come back a little bit, but you'd say they're more like Leicester, I would guess, in that they've managed to get to kind of second a couple of times, but they've not been able to win the title, and they've mostly been bouncing anywhere between sort of 4th and 10th. They've not been a great side. So interesting the way that has all worked out. If we do drop down to the Championship and have a look at this table, you can see QPR, Crystal Palace, Chelsea in 6th now. I mean, Chelsea have just been a Championship club. That's what they are now. They occasionally get promoted and have a bit of time in the Premier League, but they are just a Championship club. They are not a Premier League team anymore. Aston Villa down here. Palace, remember, were right down in League 2, so they've done well to come back up the table. A good little climb up here after being down in League 2. And you can see Leicester here getting relegated. They are a Championship team, but they're flirting closer to League 1 than the Premier League. Burnley also managing to make it up into the Championship. Down in League 1, Newcastle have just won this title. Where have Newcastle been? Championship club who've been getting relegated. They're on a downward slide. Wolves are down here. Again, a League 1 club now, Wolves. Pretty established down there. Bournemouth, another League 1 team who've been flying around League 2 rather than the Championship. And if we drop down to League 2, then we can see who've we got in here. Anybody of interest? Doesn't look like it, actually. Don't think there's any Premier League clubs down here. If we have a quick look at the Vanarama National League, I can't see any Premier League teams in there. And if we also have a look in North, I mean, Wigan have dropped down now to the Vanarama National League North, but they weren't a Premier League team. So looks like we don't have any at this point. Now, I will do the quick scan of the League 2 relegation zone from 1949 onwards, because it looks like there are no Premier League teams that have dropped this far, but we do just want to absolutely make sure of that. So if we drop down to the 49-50 season, which is where we left off with Norwich and Burnley getting promoted, we just want to keep our eye on those bottom 2 positions. You can see Wigan going up and down quite a few times, Scunthorpe, but I don't think that any Premier League teams at any point have fallen out of league football, and that certainly seems to be the case here. And we're nearly there now, and yeah, it's just not happened. At no point has a Premier League team actually been relegated in 100 years with a 30-year transfer embargo. No Premier League team has ever got relegated, which is crazy to me. I can't believe that has never happened. Now, if we have a look at some of the other leagues, starting with PSG, what we'll do is if we maybe just start with the past winners. Now, Lyon were under embargo, so they've immediately done well to come back and win quite a few of those competitions. You can see PSG have finally managed to win a few. Lyon, though, utterly dominant for so long. Marseille down here as well. Nantes did well. PSG did win a few, but after the embargo, PSG, it's taken them a very long time to get back to a point of winning. And this team, Gazaleka Xhaka here, they've done extremely well. I don't even know where they've come from. Absolutely nowhere. I think it might actually be worth looking at the league table for Ligue 1. And if we just fly back here, you can see this team here. PSG in second place. They did win a few titles, but it took them some time to get up there. And Gazaleka Xhaka, they have been in the Ligue 1 positions for a little while. Can I see them here? Yeah, they're still in the top 4 there. Lyon obviously had that really long period of dominance. I think Monaco just bouncing around mid-table at the moment. But this team just seemed to have come out of nowhere. I've never heard of this team before. I want to have a quick look at their landmarks. If we go back to the start, we'll get an idea of where they came from. From the Championnat National, which is that the third tier of French football, I believe? No, it's the second tier. Oh no, yeah, that is the third tier. So they're a former third tier team that managed to get promoted way back when. Just having a look here. So they got a new owner. Oh, they had a tycoon. That would be why. 2026, they got a tycoon take over. And that's how they were able to push up and become one of these major teams. That gave them everything that they needed to really do well. So we can understand that a little bit. Monaco never did that well. PSG, as we can see, been at the top for quite some time now. Still got a huge amount of money available to them. But interesting, Liga is the second most reputable league. Now, having a look at the Bundesliga, we can remember that Bayern Munich were not doing particularly well at the start of this. They did manage to come back and challenge for a few titles, but Wolfsburg were in charge for a long time. Hertha BC doing well. Frankfurt did well. And then Leipzig had a good run of league titles and absolutely nowhere to be seen by Munich. If we have a look at this league table, where are Bayern? They are in the top flight, but they are a bottom to middle table team now. Only secure finances. They are not particularly wealthy. Also, no Borussia Dortmund in the top tier or in the second tier either. So Borussia Dortmund, it would seem, dropping off the face of the map here. I can't see them there either. Either I've just been blind and missed them, or they are no longer a league team. You can see them there. They've dropped out of the third tier last year. They got relegated, so they are one of the teams that were under embargo. They've got a 70,000 capacity stadium, and they're now a regional team, Regionalliga West in German football, down in the fourth tier now, and that is quite a blow. Obviously, they were bouncing around a little bit between the leagues, but now they are out of the game. That's the first big team we've seen fall out of the game. Now, if we have a look at Italy next, Cagliari, utterly dominant over a period of about 15 years. Bologna had a really long stretch at the top of Italian football. Look at that. After we left off, they just continued to go. Roma had a couple. They were a team that were under embargo. They seem to be back at the top now. But looking back through the seasons here, you can see Juventus in the bottom half. Never really challenging, and certainly getting relegated a couple of times as well. So in fact, for a long time, they weren't even in the top tier. We're going to want to have a look at Juventus in a little bit more detail. You can see they had a long period of time outside of Serie A before coming back up, but they've just not been the same team they were before. Roma, the only team to really come back and compete, and even that's only happened in the last 10, 15 years. But otherwise, it's been Cagliari and Bologna at the top. So I don't want to spend too long looking at all these leagues in details. Now, here, you may remember the Real Madrid was still winning titles right up to the end of the embargo. The end of the embargo here was 2049. They actually won the most recent one. They carried on going before Barcelona came back, and it's been Real Madrid and Barcelona, except for one Real Betis win there, ever since. It may as well have never happened, that embargo, because these two teams have just kept on going, and no other team has really been able to challenge them throughout that entire period of time, which is absolutely crazy. Now, if we go over to the Champions League and have a look just at the past winners here. When we left off before in 2049, you can see Leeds, the English teams have done quite well. Bologna won a couple, Nottingham Forest managed to win a couple, Derby did, and then Bologna managed to get 5 in a row there, 6 in 7 as well. Again, it's the same teams popping up before. Barcelona suddenly appear, the first major big team from before coming in on this winners list. Coventry got 1, Leeds got 4 in a row, PSG managed to come and win 1, Barcelona, United in there as well. This Gazalec Ajaccio, doing very, very well in the more recent history. Sunderland managed to win 1 as well, 3 final appearances in a row for Sunderland. But if we look at the records here, most times won now is Leeds with 15 Champions League titles. Bologna must be pretty close behind them here. If we look at their competitions, they've won 12 Champions League titles at this point. Who else has taken quite a few? Man United must have a few by now. If we look at their screen, they're on 8. And I guess Barcelona have won quite a few recently. They are on 9. So Leeds, 15 of them is quite an impressive number. I'm surprised Bologna don't have more than Leeds, but Leeds have been winning them over a sustained period of time. That's the difference. I mean, even Nottingham Forest and Derby County now have quite a few of them. Derby County, if we look at their competition history, they now have 6 Champions Leagues, 14 Premier League titles, and Nottingham Forest, they've managed to win 6 Champions League titles now, adding to the 2 they got in the 70s and 80s. So very interesting the way that's worked out. But Leeds United, undisputed best team in England at this point, with 15 Champions League titles, 23 Premier League titles. We do just want to have a look at who's won the most Premier Leagues. Manchester United with 34. Obviously that really long run of Premier League titles. 4 Club World Cups, 17 FA Cups, 12 Super Cups, 6 Europa Leagues, 18 Carabao Cups. Leeds have totally blown apart English football during this period. Looking at Bologna, 12 Champions Leagues, 39 Serie A titles, 24 Italian Cups, 10 Super Cups, 1 Europa League in there. If we do just have a look at the Europa League as well, and look at the past winners here, I mean, this is quite a bit more varied, actually. It's quite nice to see even Russian teams winning it. Porto managed to win it. Bristol City managed to win it. Spal, Sassuolo managed to win one, or a couple. So a bit more variety here. West Brom and Birmingham also appearing. If we look at the records on this one, most times won. Borussia Mönchengladbach, quite interestingly, have won quite a few of these. They've also been runner-up in the Champions League 4 times without winning it. 5 Bundesliga titles, but all coming in the 70s. And 2 Super Cups with their 7 Europa Leagues. So interesting history there, Borussia Mönchengladbach. But overall, I think that's a pretty successful little experiment there, especially the way that the Champions League dominance was broken and none of the big teams managed to really come back there. Just Barcelona doing the job. Now, if we do have the World Cup to have a quick look at, past winners here, you can see England winning 2 in a row. England now won 5 World Cups, which is nice to see. Runner-up quite a few times as well. Germany, Portugal, France, Argentina, Holland. It's difficult to read too much into these. Now, England did actually win a home World Cup. That's nice to see. In 2078, that's when we need to stay alive till, boys. That's when we'll see England win their own World Cup. But if we do just have a quick look at the best players in the world as a final little view and see what clubs are at. So the best players in the world at the moment, Sunderland have the best player in the world. Leeds have one, PSG, United. It's nice to see that they're just not all at Manchester United and Barcelona. Those teams just haven't been able to come back and totally take that stranglehold on the game. I'm just wondering, actually, if we go to the world screen, is that how you find it? Let me have a look. Is that what we want? Here we go. Right. If we go to the world screen and look at the major clubs here by reputation, you can see Cagliari now the most reputable club in the world. Manchester United in second, Sunderland, Galazek, Ajaccio, PSG, Leipzig, Leeds, Barcelona, Real Madrid. But the English old big teams, nowhere to be seen. Manchester City all the way down here with Spurs. So I'd say this has been actually quite a successful experiment. In the top 5 teams, there's only United and PSG. In the top 10, you can only add Barcelona and Real Madrid, maybe Lyon, to that list of the major teams that have come back. So it has rebalanced world football quite a bit. That's what I'd say. So I'd call this a pretty successful experiment. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Make sure to drop a like if you've enjoyed this experiment and subscribe to the channel if you're new. But until next time, see ya.